My dream was to work for the New York Times. So I moved here with all the arrogance of somebody that doesn't really know how difficult that is. And of course, that did not work out. But I did manage to become staff photographer on the New York Post. And one of the things that we were supposed to do was to look for feature pictures, which they called weather shots. You know, windy, rainy, snowy. And the Post at the time was located on the Lower East Side. So we worked out of our cars. It was before the days of cell phones. This was 1977 to 80. I was on the staff of the Post. And we had radios. They radioed back to the desk so they could send us out on assignments. And at the end of the day, we had to come back and develop our film. And I had 2 cameras, and I usually had film left over at the end of the day. So I began driving through the Lower East Side, Alphabet City, which is now the East Village, looking for miscellaneous weather shots. And often, at the time, the Lower East Side it looked like a war zone. There were bombed out buildings that weren't even boarded up, lots and lots of vacant lots, but a wonderful playground for kids. And at the time, I mean, this was the days before AIDS, and people weren't thinking so much of needles and kids getting infected. There were a lot of kids usually roaming around in those lots. So I began to take pictures of the kids and was looking for kinds of creative things that they were doing. And one day, a young boy showed me a notebook with his name that he was practicing to put on a wall. And he said, well, why don't you take pictures of graffiti? And I had no idea that what I was seeing on walls were names. You would just see miscellaneous letters, but they didn't mean anything. You know, whenever I tried to read them, all you would see would be des or does or days, but I couldn't figure it out. And when he explained that he was practicing his name and that it was his nickname, it was sort of like the Rosetta Stone. It unlocked the secrets, and I immediately understood, oh, okay, what I'm seeing are nicknames. And when I expressed interest, he said, I can introduce you to a king. This is sort of like Deirdre's story. And I'm like, oh, a king, that sounds interesting. And so I had a car at the time, and he came in my car with me, and he managed to figure out how to go out to East New York, which if the Lower East Side looked like a war zone, East New York looked even more so. And we arrived at a miscellaneous door and knocked on it, and it was Dondi's house. This is Dondi in this picture. And I introduced myself, and he said, oh, Martha Cooper. And he brought out his black book where he practiced writing his name, and in the front page of the black book, he had clipped one of those weather pictures that I had taken that happened to have one of his tags in the background. Of course, I was amazed that anybody would even notice this tag, because I wasn't tuned into tags at the time. So he knew immediately that I was not a cop, for example. And, and that was my introduction, and it was a wonderful introduction. That was my entree into the world of graffiti. And I came back and recorded him, and he taught me all the different language, and I mean, so many things. And I mean, it was really amazing to me that these kids were graphic designers and that absolutely nothing about graffiti was random. You know, what I had thought were random acts of vandalism turned out to be, carefully crafted acts of vandalism. So, carefully prepared acts of vandalism. And by the time I took this picture, I had actually been working on this as I still had my job at the New York Post. So this was my personal project. And it had been going on for about a year. And I had photographed all kinds of things. I'd started looking at trains, which I had never looked at before, and waiting for big pieces to come by on trains. I had photographed Dondi in his room practicing all day long with his friends, practicing their outlines. But the one thing I hadn't photographed was going to the yards. And I realized I needed to do that in order to have a complete story. And I kept asking him, can we go? When can we go? And finally he said we could go. And so I went. And this picture was taken after a night in the yards. So it wasn't simply a matter of running in and running out. And of course, we had to sneak into the yards. And of course, that was a risk, but it was a risk that turned out to be well worth it. And anyway, this is the best picture from that series. And eventually, I did get a book published with Henry Chalfant, who was working similarly on graffiti. And that book sort of sent graffiti around the world. And I think this picture was kind of key, not because it shows how amazing the art was on the train, but I think it did capture the energy of painting a train and the thrill of painting a train and the intensity. And people know this picture. Wherever I go, they refer to this picture. So, of course, that makes me proud and happy. And I guess it is my favorite picture. So that's it.
Let's start in New York when sort of the graffiti scene was starting to explode in New York. You were there obviously documenting at that time. What was it about that movement that sort of drew you to photograph it?
I was interested in kids that were doing creative things when their parents weren't watching. And I met a young boy who introduced me to graffiti because he showed me that he had designs in a notebook that he was putting on a wall. And that the idea that he was a designer really inspired me.
And you've clearly, obviously, also photographed just sort of the street life of New York itself, not just the graffiti. You know, you came from Baltimore. How did you end up in New York?
I specifically came to New York to be a newspaper photographer. That was my goal at the time, and I realized it by working for the New York Post. And I was working for the Post when I first began to shoot all the street stuff.
Now, when you did begin shooting all the street photography and the graffiti, do you remember clearly a point when you realized, like, this is something amazing? This is something that's going to become bigger than it is today?
No, you know, actually, I don't think I ever really understood how big it was going to become. I didn't think that. I just thought this is something amazing, and nobody's ever going to know about it because it's going to die out quickly. And I wanted to take pictures as sort of a historic preservation.
Sure.
I didn't realize that it was amazing until, like, 10 years later, maybe. Years I pursued other things, and then I came back to it when there was a kind of sense of nostalgia and old school, and then that's really when I understood how worldwide it was.
Do you ever go back in your own archives and look at shots that you took 20 years from today or in the past and are just like amazed at what you were photographing back then?
Yeah, I did that for when I was putting together the Hip Hop Files, and that was for a German publishing company called From Here to Fame. And it wasn't until Akim Walta, who is head of that company, came and he was going through my files and exclaiming over all these things. I'm like, oh, really? And a lot of things I didn't know what it was.
So it just sort of, you sort of were shooting exactly what you wanted to shoot and what you felt was proper.
Yeah, I sort of just went along taking pictures that I wanted to take, stuck them in a file, and didn't really look at them for about 20 years.
Clearly the work you've done has been an important document into a specific, moment in time. I mean, that is the truth. I mean, you clearly we're photographing stuff that people now look back and reflect on and also use for inspiration. Is there anything currently going on with the graffiti scene that excites you?
I'm a sticker collector right now. And only hand-drawn stickers, and I have a huge collection of hand-drawn stickers. I wouldn't say that's the only thing that excites me, but it's the only thing that I'm really actively involved in doing, because I actually think that all the graffiti artists now are documenting their own work. They don't really have need for me to go out and take pictures of their walls.
Sure.
They all have their own cameras. But the stickers are kind of an unknown phenomenon outside of a small group, and I actually peel stickers off and put them in books, and yeah.
So we can expect some collection coming out soon with your sticker collection as well.
If you know of a publisher, I got the stickers.
So let's step back a bit from New York and go back in your past. I understand that you have an anthropology degree.
Like I have a 1-year graduate degree in anthropology. I don't have like a PhD in anthropology, but yeah, I studied anthropology.
And I believe you went on a motorcycle trip at one point. Was this was this Asia or Africa that you did this?
Asia, Thailand, England, but that was like way pre-hip hop.
It's still very interesting. I wonder what got you into doing that.
I was in the Peace Corps in Thailand for 2 years, and I wanted to take pictures on my way home, and the cheapest way to do it was by motorcycle.
In 1975, I moved to New York City. It was a place that I had barely even visited. But at the time, New York was the center of the publishing world in the United States, and I wanted to be where the action was, even though I didn't really have a clear idea of how I was going to accomplish this. I had been a photographer for a small weekly newspaper, but I was determined to go to New York and have a career as a photographer, and after 2 difficult years, I managed to get a job with the New York Post, which is a big metropolitan daily newspaper. I was the first female staff photographer. The Post specialized in pictures of celebrities, which was not really my interest, but one of the things that we had to do, we had an ongoing assignment to take pictures of what they called weather shots. And these were feature pictures that could be put into the newspaper whenever there was a space. And that was the part of my job that I liked the best, because I could drive around in my car waiting for the next assignment to come in on our 2-way radio. We had radios that went back to the city desk because this was the day before cell phones. And I could explore New York and just see what I could find. Now, this kind of photography was not new to me. I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. My dad, Ben, and my uncle Harry owned a camera store. And my dad used to take me out on camera runs when I was 3 or 4 years old. He gave me my first camera when I was in nursery school. And this is exactly what we used to do. We used to go out looking for pictures. So for me, that was what photography was. And today, some 70 plus years later, that is still the kind of photography that I like to do. I'm not really interested in dramatic lighting. I'm not interested in very unusual angles. I don't really want to be an artist. I think of myself as a documenter. And today, I think I do exactly the same kind of photography that I did back then. As it turns out, photography and exploration, or images and exploration, have been together since the very beginning of expeditions. For example, this is a picture from 1590 of a New World exploration. Photographers have often gone along on expeditions. Frank Hurley went on the Shackleton expedition in 1914 and was trapped in the ice, but he still managed to save his plates and brought back remarkable photographs from that trip. So these kinds of photographs were published in magazines, newspapers, early photography catalogs advertised small cameras as being excellent for exploration. And I grew up on these magazines. My parents subscribed to Life and National Geographic, and that was what I wanted to do. So as soon as I could, when I graduated from college, I joined the Peace Corps, and I went and taught English in Thailand for 2 years. And at the end of that tour of duty, instead of buying a plane ticket home, I decided to buy a motorcycle. And I drove the motorcycle from Thailand to England. taking pictures all the way, through Iran, through Afghanistan, taking pictures along the way. Many of those pictures are similar to the pictures that I take today. These experiences really prepared me for an adventurous life in New York City. And when I first arrived in the city in 1975, the city was really going through some hard times. It was close to bankruptcy. There were vast areas of boarded up buildings and vacant lots. And these were really dangerous places because there was a lot of drug dealing. People didn't dare to go there. But for me, these were really interesting places to photograph. So while I was working for the newspaper, looking for those weather photographs, I used to drive through these neighborhoods, and I began a project looking for kids who were doing creative things, building things, while their parents weren't watching. So one day, I met a boy whom I had photographed with his pigeon coop, and he showed me his drawings in his notebook. And he explained to me that he was practicing his name, his nickname, which was He3. He was practicing his name to paint a wall. And he asked me, why don't you take pictures of graffiti? And actually, I had never really understood that graffiti, that I had seen everywhere in New York, were actually nicknames that kids had written on the wall. And as soon as he showed me that notebook and I saw that he was basically a designer, designing a logo, I became interested, and he said, well, I can introduce you to a king of graffiti. And of course, that was something I couldn't turn down. And the king turned out to be Dondi, who in fact was a prolific train writer and widely admired for his style. So Dondi invited me to come back and spend a day with him and his friends in his room while he was designing. They all were designing their names in their notebooks. Because graffiti wasn't just a matter of writing your name, you had to write your name with style. But one of the things that impressed me about Dondi was that he always took a picture whenever he put a piece on a train. And he had a photo album, his own photo album of his own photographs. Just like the early explorers, he was documenting his own expeditions. And because I could take better pictures, I was a professional photographer, and I soon began to give them photos, I was welcomed into the world of graffiti. And pretty soon, I was so fascinated by it that I quit my full-time job at the Post, and I started going up to the Bronx, where there were these vast areas of open lots, but you could see the trains coming and going. And I spent hours and hours and hours just standing there, waiting for fresh, new graffiti pieces to come by on the train, and trying to vary the different backgrounds. For example, this piece, you can see there are two cars together. They both say Duster and Lizzie. Duster and Lizzie were a couple who rode together. But one is in straight letters and the other is in wild style, just to show you the vast differences in style that you could write your name. So finally, after about a year of documenting these trains, Dondi invited me to come to the yards and actually see how one of these big pieces was painted. So this was really instrumental because I had not really been able to understand how they could reach the top of the trains, for example. So going to the yards, I got to see how they use their sketchbooks, how they managed to space out their names according to where the windows were, how they could climb up to the top, bracing against the cars. And this is the train that was painted that night. Beautiful top to bottom. So, of course, like most explorers, I wanted to publish my findings. That turned out to be totally difficult. I teamed up with another photographer, Henry Chalfant, who had also been documenting trains, and together we probably sent out 50 proposals to publishers with no results, because American publishers did not want to glorify vandalism. Finally, we found Thames and Hudson in England, who published a very slim volume, Subway Art, 96 pages, paperback. Did not do very well, got absolutely no press. But slowly but surely, the books began to disappear out of bookstores and into the hands of the graffiti writers. And the reason that this book became so popular was because this was before the internet, and this was the only way that they could see how the actual letters were styled. So the book became a guide, like a style guide. Pretty soon, other artists began appropriating space for art. Artists like Keith Haring and Basquiat. And this was the beginning of what we now call street art. And the real difference between street art and graffiti is that street art is about imagery, where graffiti is more about lettering. So if you often will see a wall, a big street art wall with an image on it that has been gone over by graffiti lettering, because there's an ongoing battle between the two camps, of street art and graffiti, although there is a lot of overlap. Now, the traditional tools of a graffiti writer are paint and markers. But since then, there have been some innovations, such as filling fire extinguishers with paint. Because this is a way that you can very quickly spray your name very high and very illegally. Now today, there are shops that specialize in graffiti supplies, and there are manufacturers, many paint manufacturers that manufacture paint, especially for graffiti. One of these manufacturers is Krink, a former graffiti writer. He actually manufactures a fire extinguisher for use for graffiti, but like many graffiti writers and street artists, his work is in demand in galleries and museums. And here he is in the Pera Museum in Istanbul, having sprayed an art piece inside the museum with a fire extinguisher. Street artists are not limited to paint and markers. They use absolutely every kind of material available. Yarn bombing is one very popular form. This is Oleg, who is like the queen of crochet. So now street art is found around the world. It's considered the biggest art movement that's ever been in the history of the world. And it's found in many unusual places, such as Dakar, Senegal, islands like the Azores, in Bangkok, Tahiti. This year, Tahiti, where published a stamp from a street artist, Seth, in a page of stamps, and you can see that they put a very cool spray can. This is the Tahitian government published this stamp. Very cool spray can with Tahitian designs around the bottom of this page of stamps. So who could have ever expected that? But the gold standard of graffiti, the ultimate achievement of any graffiti writer, is still to write your name on a train. That hasn't changed. There have been many technical innovations. There are walls being painted today that can only be seen online. Insa has something that he calls Gifiti. He laboriously paints 4 layers on a wall, then puts them together, puts them online, and it looks something like this. So the original wall is hand-painted, but you can only see it if you go online. There are all kinds of new audiences for street art and graffiti. I've been working on a project, Goldman Global Arts in Miami, where street artists and graffiti writers are painting walls inside the Miami Dolphins Stadium, which is a very unlikely place. There's a growing interest in what's called artivism. This is a house designed by Swoon, who worked with engineers to build houses in Haiti after the earthquake, sustainable architecture that they can build themselves. So this is really of interest to me, street art for a cause. There's the Pangea Seed Foundation, has artists painting walls to create awareness about pressing environmental issues, ocean issues. And this is a wall painted by Faith 47 with a seabird entangled in twine. But my favorite artivism project is called Pimp My Carosa. And I've been working with Mundano, who's here, on this project. He got hundreds of carts together of the recyclable collectors in Brazil and had street artists paint them, but also worked with the community to help the collectors, give them things like eyeglasses if they needed it, new shoes if they needed it, safety reflectors, and also to raise awareness of the importance of recycling, but also giving visibility and respect to the people who do it. And so Mundano also came to New York, and we've tried to get a similar thing going in New York City. So one of the things that I most admire about graffiti writers and street artists, but I admire the illegal part where they appropriated space for art and they just put their work out there. They didn't wait for a gallery to decide whether their work was good enough. They're bold enough to put their work out there and let the public decide if they like it or not. And this, to me, is extremely appealing. And now that digital photography has put cameras in the hands of all of us, I feel like we can all be explorers. We can all be documenters. And this is a way we can preserve what we want to preserve. And this is putting history into our own hands. We become the historians. And so whether you're circumnavigating the globe or you're going around your block, I urge you to take your camera, have your camera ready. You never know what might be the next big thing. And go out there, shoot, and more importantly, get it out there, like online. Okay, that's it. I'm going to take a picture of you.
Hi everybody, welcome to Sit Down. I'm DJ Sixsmith. Special guest in the building, it's Martha Cooper. How are you?
Hi, DJ. Thanks for having me.
Very nice to meet you. First of all, congratulations on the documentary. Perfectly called Martha.
Yeah.
All about you, your life, your career. How crazy is it? Have you processed all this, that someone has made a film about your life and your work?
No, I haven't really processed it. I'm in the processing process.
There you go. Is that a constant thing? Just an evolution
Yes.
over time?
Yes. Well, tonight I'm going to see it again,
How many times have you seen it?
once.
What did you
And
think?
I liked it, but I think I missed some of the subtleties.
Yeah, once
So
you
I'm
go
gonna-
back a second
Yeah,
time, you
now I
catch a
want
few
to
more
really
things.
watch it.
Definitely. And I mean, from what I've read and the little part I've seen so far, you have a really fascinating story. So let's start at the beginning. Take me back to when you first get your hands on a camera and when you first fall in love with all this.
Well, I first got my hands on the camera because my father had a camera store and gave me a camera when I was in nursery school. Seriously.
Yeah, you were really young.
So, and always used to take me on what he called camera runs, which basically was going around the city looking for pictures. And that's sort of what I do now. So I started when I was like 3.
Wow. So what part of the
and,
city was it back then?
Baltimore.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
Not the same city.
Right.
We're in New York City. That was Baltimore. And, I toyed with various career options, but really I just wanted to be a photographer.
What else were you considering?
Anthropology.
I
But
think I
then
made
it
a
turned
good
out it
choice.
was too analytical for me. So I did the next best thing. I married an anthropologist.
Oh, there you go. You still have that in your life.
That didn't last, but it was just too hard to
I
be an
gotcha.
anthropologist. You had to get a PhD.
Hmm.
It's too analytical. I mean, my idea was that I was going to go take pictures of tribes.
Because you've been all around the world taking
I have
pictures.
been all around the world.
Give me some of the craziest spots you've been in your time.
Well, I'll just start with one spot, which is, it's not such a crazy spot, but for graffiti, it's a crazy spot, and that's Tahiti, because that's where I met Selena.
Oh, wow.
And that's where the germ of this documentary started. But you wouldn't think that Tahiti would be a place where anybody would want graffiti, but
No.
in fact, there was a graffiti festival
Wow.
for 4 or 5 years. I went 4 of the 5 years, And even the tourist bureau was supporting it.
Wow,
So
that's really
would you
interesting.
imagine that
Yeah.
people would go to Tahiti to see graffiti?
That's crazy. No, I would
No,
never in my
never.
wildest dreams imagine that.
And when I was photographing graffiti in New York City, I never imagined it would go any further than New York.
Right.
So,
Yeah, because in New York at that time, it's just this underground world, and it's not like it's being pumped up by people. You're trying to take
no,
down people that
and
are doing
exactly.
graffiti.
And it seemed as if it was a product of the times.
Hmm.
New York was going bankrupt, and there were vast areas with vacant lots, and there were holes in the fences of subway yards, and there were just many things that allowed graffiti to happen in New York. And I thought, well, this is never going to, no other country is going to be able to put this together in the same way. But I was completely wrong.
So obviously, when you first see graffiti at that time, it's visually appealing. It stands out to you. But what fascinated you the most about this whole underworld that was starting to become mainstream?
Well, it wasn't all that visually appealing, actually.
No?
No, in fact, it was indecipherable. And what made it appealing to me was meeting a young boy who explained to me that he was writing his name. And then after I understood that kids were writing their nicknames and that it wasn't just random vandalism, it was precisely timed vandalism. You know?
Yeah, it's an art.
Yeah. But that they were writing their names and writing them again and again and again. And it was a matter of getting up and how many times they could do that and where they could do that. I just became fascinated with it because they knew what was going on, but pretty much nobody else did.
So when did other people start to catch on?
Well, a lot of them still haven't caught on.
Why do you think that is?
Because I think that they equate, I think the term graffiti has a negative connotation. And when you even say it, they immediately go vandalism. And they're not thinking, well, vandalism could also be art. And I'm not arguing, oh, this is all fine art or
Sure.
anything like that. But, people don't like to see spray painted names where they're not supposed to be.
Yeah,
They're like,
they shouldn't be here. Yeah.
Yes, they shouldn't be here. But on the other hand, mostly people do not complain about advertising, which in New York City, it's just
Everywhere,
I
yeah.
mean, think about the subway now. It's on the trains even. It's on the turnstiles.
It's every
on
single
the
place.
posts.
Yeah.
You know,
whole
those
subway
vinyl
trains.
wraps. Yes, exactly. And I think, where do you think they got that idea of moving? Buses have ads on them. Nobody complains about that.
Yeah, we're perfectly fine with that.
Yes, perfectly fine.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
And some of the ads are really ugly.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
just too much,
And also indecipherable.
That too.
I
yeah.
mean, last night we were passing an ad and we're like, what is that advertising? And you're going past a bus shelter and, surely an advertising agency spent time designing this ad. But if you can't read it and tell what it is going by the bus station, why does that make it any better or different from a tag that you can't read?
Sure. Yeah.
And at least you know the tag was done by hand.
Right. That's true. So when you started showing some of these pictures to your colleagues at the Post, friends, family, etc.,
Nobody was interested.
not a single person.
Oh, no, I won't say that. There were a few people that were sort of interested, but not, the Post definitely no, not interested. My ex-husband, somewhat interested.
Okay.
Because he was an anthropologist,
Right.
so he
So he kinda got it.
He got it. But his colleagues really argued they did not get it.
Wow.
They hated it.
So when did people start to get it, or at least start to see what you were capturing here?
Well, we had a lot of, Henry Chalfant and I met through graffiti writers. We both were documenting trains, and we decided to do a book, and nobody would publish it. And we could not, we must have had, 25, 30 rejections.
Wow.
We tried every publishing company we could think of, and we had to go to Europe to get it published. So I would say in New York, when did they start getting it? I don't know, did they get it?
Yeah, I mean, you can
know,
honestly ask that
kids
question.
got it. The next generation's got it.
Right. But at that time, it's just graffiti is labeled a certain way. You throw vandalism in there,
Yeah.
and that's the way that people are going to think about it. It's almost marijuana in a very similar way, labeled a certain way,
Exactly.
and you can't get out from underneath that.
Yeah.
So for you that's been there on the ground seeing this, I'm sure you chuckle to yourself sometimes because it can be an organic experience for somebody. They're putting their name, they're putting a story behind it, and some people are just never going to get that.
But of course, then it made me feel like, well, I get it. It gave me an inside track on
You're in this
what it
little
was.
exclusive club. And
Yes,
then
well, then that was part of the attraction.
Totally.
Was that exclusive is a word that journalists often use. So, you know, they want an exclusive. So I felt that I had an exclusive on the subject matter, and that made it more appealing.
Definitely. And even though you struggled to get your book published, once it does get published, people start looking at this, and it's people all around the world that are touched by it. So how cool was that
Well,
for you?
The book did not do well, especially the first edition. And it definitely didn't do well in the United States, which was considered a foreign edition by it was an English publisher. It started to do well in Europe, but it wasn't for about 20 years until I understood that.
Wow. And why do you
So-
think it took so long?
It just really, because I had kind of backed away from the topic. I was doing other things, and partially it was because I wasn't paying attention. And it wasn't until I did another book and I traveled in Europe that I understood the impact. Because then we did a book signing tour across Europe for another book I did called The Hip Hop Files, old hip hop pictures, and lots of graffiti kids, writers,
I'm sure they like
turned
that
out
book.
for that book.
Yeah.
And they, you know, and they came up to me and then they told, oh, Subway Art, and then they brought copies of their book. All of the covers fell off of almost every
Wow.
book, and but they had them all pieced back together, and that's when I began to understand that it had spread further than I ever thought it could have.
Yeah, there's some mass appeal here, which is really
Yeah.
cool. So when you meet Selena in Tahiti, what's the initial pitch in terms of the documentary?
Well, can we talk to Selena? You know, it wasn't as if we just really discussed it then, certainly not the first time we met, but I got to see Selena in action, and Selena is an expert with a drone. And I think maybe that might have been the first time I'd really seen a drone in serious professional use. And she would carry that thing around and send that thing up and
they're game
bring that
changers.
thing down.
Yeah.
And I was really impressed with that, with her technical skills with the drone. And then people told me about these videos that she had, and I saw them, that she's got this one amazing video called Limitless, which I recommend you look at
I'll
if you
check it
haven't
out.
seen it.
Yeah.
And I think it's gotten something like 12 million views
Oh,
on
wow.
YouTube. I don't think it had that many then, but maybe it had
Starting to
6
pop a
million
little
or
bit.
something. But that is a hilarious, funny, well done video, and so I was impressed with that. And so and we drove around Tahiti because she was filming the same thing I was shooting stills, she was shooting video. We both needed to take pictures of people painting walls. And I mean, they brought people over to paint walls. It wasn't,
Wow.
this was not illegal, this was legal.
This is encouraged.
Yeah. And the first year I was there, it was a real graffiti festival, like letter-based graffiti, not street art, which I consider something a little bit different.
What are the differences?
Well, graffiti is about letters. It's about writing your name with style. That's the basis of graffiti writing. Graffiti as we're talking about it, New York City style.
Right.
Street art can be, and it's usually spray paint or marker. It can be a tag or it can be a piece. It can be like 3D pieces, but still it's spray paint and marker. Street art can be anything. It can be yarn. It can be tiles. It can be any kind of material, and it can be any kind of imagery. And it usually isn't letter-based. It's not alphabet, you know. I mean, even graffiti in foreign countries you can have Cyrillic lettering. Or, you know, in Israel, you can have Hebrew. It doesn't have to be, what do you call an American alphabet? Not a Roman alphabet? What's our alphabet?
I don't know.
It doesn't,
I
have,
just
to be
call it the
it doesn't have to
alphabet.
be ABC,
Right.
like we know it.
Yeah.
It can be
It's
any
much
kind
more
of
open-ended.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
other countries, but it's still letters. And that, to me, that is, when I say graffiti, that's what I'm talking about.
I gotcha.
And it's mostly names,
I gotcha.
nicknames. And street art is, which is mostly what the festivals that we go to, it's mostly street artists painting big murals. It's more like muralism. So whereas graffiti might have a little character thrown in, or sometimes the character is like introducing the piece, Street art often is like no letters at all, just a big a mural.
I gotcha. So as the documentary is starting to be made, what was most interesting for you in terms of unpacking your life and your career and just the impact of all your work?
And what was the most interesting? Well, it did require me to dig up a lot of old stuff, and I don't throw a lot of things away.
You like to
So
keep it?
I do have. I wouldn't go so far as to say I'm a hoarder, but I do have a lot of boxes full of papers and books and things. And Selena was very energetic when you said the word unpacking. Selena literally unpacked.
Literally and figuratively
Yes,
unpacked.
yes. I mean, I have 4 storage rooms,
Wow.
3 in my my building, and 1 in Manhattan Mini Storage in Harlem. And Selena went to all of them, and we rooted around looking for, and we came up with some interesting things. So that was, that was like a
That
trip.
must have been cool.
A
Yeah.
trip through memory lane.
That's a lot of boxes.
It is a lot of boxes, and it's still a lot of boxes.
But I mean, think about how many pictures you've taken over the years.
Oh, I'm sure millions.
Millions.
And I don't think that's an exaggeration.
No, definitely not.
And mostly film
Mm.
and slides.
Wow, yeah.
Transparent. You know what a slide is?
I do know what a slide
know,
is.
but
Yeah. I didn't personally use a
yeah,
slide, but
yeah.
I do know what a slide is.
I think there are people now that wouldn't, if
Yeah,
I said
no,
slides,
honestly.
wouldn't know. They're transparencies.
Do
They're
you-
in slide pages. They're in big files.
Do you miss anything about those old days and the older technology?
No,
Like the digitized world that we live in?
I like digital. I prefer digital.
It's nice and easy, right?
It is.
You Instagram on the way here, boom, it's out
But
there. People
also,
can
I
see
mean,
it.
in terms of getting a picture, like with film, remember, first of all, only 36 frames on a
That's
roll
right.
of film.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to, when I traveled, I would have to travel. What if you run out of film and you're in a country that they don't
Right.
sell film?
You can't run out of film in that situation.
Yeah, so you have to take a lot of film. And there was always the X-ray problem where you're not supposed to put it through X-rays, in the scanner when you're going into the airport, so you have to wrap it up. And I mean, you're carrying, most of your luggage is film. And then you don't get to see it till you get home.
Right. You have
And
no
if you've
idea.
made a mistake, if you've set your ISO incorrectly, or, and there's so many things that can happen with film, and you don't know until you get home. There's no way to recoup that shot. Whereas here, you can continually
Right.
check.
You have your computer, your phone.
Yeah, you can
check how it's going.
Yeah, you can see, and that's plus digital balances the light for you.
True.
So film, we're
Manually,
shooting daylight
yeah.
film, so you either filter it or whatever, and it was very slow,
Hmm.
64 ISO,
It's really transformed.
really
so-
slow,
Yeah,
right?
Definitely.
Yeah, so there's a lot of advantages with digital.
So when people check out the documentary, start to learn about your story, what do you want people to think about everything when it comes to your story?
Well, one, about my work, I want them to see the breadth of my work and not just see me as a graffiti and street art photographer, even though that is, if I hadn't done that, we wouldn't be doing the
Sure.
documentary.
But there's much more to
there's
the
a
story.
lot more, and Selena included it, and I'm really happy about that. And 2, for like young photographers, I think they can see that persistence goes a long way. And if you have a career goal and you really want that goal, and you have to keep trying and trying and trying, because there were many rejections along the way, and mistakes, and some goals. As I wanted to work for National Geographic, I finally got to work for National Geographic, and then it turned out I wasn't any good at working for National. It wasn't really my thing once I got to where I thought I wanted to go. So there are twists and turns in a career path, and I think that young, not just photographers, but maybe people in the arts, or maybe anybody on any kind of career, seeing that movie might just be inspired to keep at it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's great advice, because we always think about the end goal in our culture, and some people don't get there, some people do get there, and it's not what they expected, or it's different,
Yeah. And so you
it's
have
time
to
for something
feel
else.
free to change that goal.
Right.
Maybe.
Adjust, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. To adapt and adjust and switch to another path.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe understand better about what you're good at, and then go down that road, and all of that happens. So we're talking, I've been at it now for over 50 years.
Yeah, decades.
So
Takes time.
Decades. So, but you know, I think that's a good lesson to learn, and I hope I communicated that, and I think I did.
Absolutely. And
So,
I think
Selena was able to communicate that.
it's worked
about
out.
me,
I think it's
so.
worked out pretty well for you. That is Martha Cooper. Martha, A Picture Story is the name of the film. Instagram, the website. Martha, your personal Instagram as well.
At Martha Cooper Graham.
There you go.
Yes.
That's Martha. I'm DJ. We'll see you next time here on The Sit Down.
Bye.